Everyone, I'm so excited that you could make it to tonight, our virtual programming panel on artist collectives. If you don't, most of you already know me, but if you don't, I'm the administrative director for Art Plus Everywhere. My name's Laura, and I am honored to be working with lots of the Art Plus Everywhere committees, including this one. So before I hand it off to Jill, our moderator and our awesome panelists for the evening, I just want to speed run through a few of the current Art Plus Everywhere opportunities and happenings. Most recently and very exciting, our call for innovation grants is open, so you are welcome to submit proposals now. Through about October-ish is the deadline, and then the working period will be 2027. Any graduates of Art Institute of Boston, Lesley University of Art and Design, and Clark University are eligible to apply, and there's more information on our website. Any questions about any of these items, I'll show you some contact information at the end. You're welcome to screenshot. Next up for our virtual programming series will be a workshop. I'm excited to have more details on that coming soon. That will be early fall. So we hope you'll come back. We also, related to virtual programming, we also have a current open call for proposals for this programming, starting in 2027 and onwards, as we have the rest of the year pretty much lined up. And because of a generous anonymous donor, we actually can offer stipends for our speakers and panelists. So we're super excited for that to be available now. If you want to come hang out, Gallery Rag, the OG in Gloucester, is having an opening night party. Here's the information for that, saving the date for Friday, June 12th. This is the sort of exhibition leg of Art Plus Everywhere. Related, on July 12th, we have an Art Plus Everywhere collaboration with Behind VA Shadows, curated by alumni Brenda and Stephanie Williams, both members of our board. So we hope you'll join us for the exhibition opening there. There will be more information on that soon as well. And if you have questions on that massive amount of information I covered in 3 minutes, here's where you can learn more or get in touch if you have anything specific. Always happy to hear from the community. And now the exciting part. I am so excited to introduce Jill Christian as our moderator for tonight's event on collectives. In 2025, Jill relocated from New Mexico to Salem, Massachusetts, so she's very close to the heart of where our alumni are based. She's been shown nationally in solo and group shows, is in several public and private collections. And of course, most importantly, near and dear to us is she serves both on our advisory board and on the virtual programming committee. So we're so excited to have her lead this event tonight. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand it over.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited to have our panelists here this evening. They've generously agreed to come and speak to us about their experience with artist collectives. And just to get started, we are going to have each panelist speak about their experiences, and during their discussions, if you have questions in the chat for them, please just enter them in the chat, and then at the end we will do a Q&A so that you can get your questions answered. And our topic this evening is artist collectives, and just give me one moment here. So our topic tonight is artist collectives, who are they for, and how to start one. To start with, we're going to speak with Nova Darkstar, and Nova is a multidisciplinary artist and musician who's committed to community building as an art form and art as a form of community building. Their practice explores themes of identity and belonging in the LGBTQIA plus sphere and beyond. Nova's multimedia projects are collaborative in nature, inviting viewers to actively participate in the work and bring it to fruition. And also with us this evening, we have Karen Fitzgerald. And Karen was born and raised on a dairy farm in the Midwest. It is this early, close relationship with the natural world that informs her work. She has an active exhibition history in the US and abroad and actively curates exhibitions and is a master teaching artist. The Queens Community Arts Fund, Women's Studio Workshop, and New York Foundation of the Arts have funded her work. The work is in private, public, and museum collections, heavily influenced by poetry. Her work delights in the energy of gardens, mysteries, and all things visible. And finally with us tonight is Rachel TonThat. And Rachel is an interdisciplinary artist and writer working with narrative structures around themes and possible futures, memory, and space-time. She's co-founded the social art and publishing project O'Reilly's Press and curates the project space Airtight Garage here in Salem, Massachusetts. She was selected for the inaugural She Who Has No Master writing mentorship through the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network and completed her MA Fine Arts at Zurich University of the Arts. Her work has been supported by the City of Zurich, Canton St. Gallen, New England Foundation for the Arts, the Mass Cultural Council, Collective Futures Fund, Tin House Writing Workshop, Foundation Jan Migalski, and more. Her essays and art criticism have appeared in Diacritics, The AMP, Boston Art Review, and her book of translations and retellings of Swiss folklore with Tobias Bartsch, excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, Die Alp an sich, is forthcoming from Poets and Traders Press. So welcome, everybody. So what is an artist collective? So I looked this up on different websites, and the Tate had a very succinct definition that loosely defined an art collective is a group of artists working together to achieve a common objective, united by shared ideologies, aesthetics, and or political beliefs. And there are a few well-known historical collectives: Guerrilla Girls, Fluxus, Superflex, Afrocobra, Air Gallery. If you decide to research some examples, there are just numerous examples. And one thing I wanted to emphasize in our talk tonight is that as creatives, we should really think about collectives as being an open field that we can gather and define for ourselves. And I want to say, as we begin our discussion, don't be afraid. Define your mission, avoid pitfalls, and gather your group. And to help us get the creative juices flowing, we've got three wonderful panelists tonight who are going to share their experiences with us. And hopefully from that, it will give you some ideas of how you might go about forming a collective, different types and models for collectives, and some of the best practices and pitfalls you might want to avoid as you think about starting your own artist collective. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and Nova will be our first speaker tonight.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you, Jill. Thank you, Art Plus Everywhere. Grateful to be here. Excited to hear what my fellow panelists have to share. And basically, I'm going to walk you through first some basic facts about the collective that I'm a part of, and then take you inside of a meeting that we had. We actually met this morning, and I was able to pose questions to my fellow collective members and get their insights to share back with you. And then if there's time, I'm going to walk you through our most recent exhibition. So here we go. So brazenly, the name of our collective is Collective. We were formed in 2019. And you might notice that the L's in collective are actually the number 11. So originally we had 11 members. Through some early attrition, we went down to 8 folks. Our membership is from New York and New Jersey. We meet monthly via Zoom, alternating between critiques and some kind of edifying reading or discussion. And we've had 4 exhibits to date, so over the last 6 years or so. And here's our collective from this morning. I'm just going to get rid of this box so I can see better here. So we have a total of 8, but 6 folks showed up this morning. We have Katie, myself, Ellie, who's actually my sister, Frank, Joe, and Katrina. And I posed to folks this morning, oh, there we go, 3 questions. And so I invited them basically to reflect on our collective and what's been going well, what's been challenging, and what we might have done differently at the outset, knowing what we know now. And I hope that this discussion will, cast some light on your own questions, provide you some answers as you think about a collective for yourself. So the first question I posed was, what's working about this collective? And again, I've got to see if I can get rid of, here we go, there. So Katie said, we've established trust, no worries about offending each other. So we have this deep sense of family, respect, care for each other. And so there's a sense that we can be open and honest with each other and trust that we'll be there for each other. No, still not working. We have an open dialogue as a group, whether in one-to-one relationships, we're all connected in that way as well, or in the larger group. It's a sense of free discussion, always excitement in being together, and a sense that we can kind of go wherever the discussion takes us. I value and am interested in everyone's work, says Ellie, and that's true for all of us. There's a great sense of excitement and passion about each other's work and interest in it, and interest in each other as people. And Kim says, diversity in our approaches to making and what we make. So as you'll see, it's a very diverse group of artists in terms of what we make and how we approach making. And I said the diversity of the work is our glue rather than commonality. So some collectives might form because, well, we're all potters or we're all painters. In our case, what attracted us to working together was the diversity of the work. And to share a little bit of our background again, so we first connected up because Ellie invited us all to show together in a group show. And we enjoyed each other's work so much and got such a great kind of vibe from the work and each other that we wanted to continue. And I think that's been really important, that there was this kind of seed of connection, excitement, and passion that has really carried us forward through any potential difficulties and continues to resonate. And Joe says, and we can meet virtually, which makes the group accessible. So question 2, what can we do better? And so this speaks to our ability to speak freely with each other. Ellie said, equity of voice. Some voices dominate generally along gender lines. Frank, which we'll be addressing during today's meeting, which we did this morning. We came up with a critique process that would better assure equity of voice. We tried that out this morning. More meetings. Monthly is not frequent enough. So there's a sense of wanting more contact and having more continuity of connection. And I said better attendance. It's not often that we have everyone attending, and maybe it would be helpful to have a set date rather than resetting the date each month. Kim said, quarterly in-person meeting, maybe for a field trip to a museum would be fun. I love that idea. And Katie, who has been our sort of default facilitator, said, how about round robin delegation of meeting facilitation? So this conversation actually opened up some good things for us to follow up on. And what would we do differently at the outset, knowing what we know now? I described how we came together, but there are certain things we didn't consider at that point. So we had a long discussion about this at last month's meeting. Right, we talked about how we're diverse in our work and approaches to our work, but not so much in our identities as people. So this group consists of mostly white folks who are cisgender, one queer person, myself, and one person of color. And we just recognized at this point that if we had given more attention to that, the diversity of the work and approach, which is so enlivening and enriching for us, would have been tripled by having potentially a more diverse group of folks in terms of identity. Says Frank. We also talked about potentially merging with another group or maybe adding new members to address that. But ultimately, we decided to keep our membership as it is and potentially collaborate as a group with other collectives as a way of broadening our relationships. So that was our discussion, which you're now privy to. And I want to talk a little bit about our exhibits. As I mentioned, we've had 4 exhibits, and we kind of come up with that theme through a collaborative process. Our most recent show was called Murmuration. So I'm sure you folks have seen images of starlings and how they form groupings such as this. And we saw this as kind of a metaphor for collaboration between us as artists, where you can distinctly see each individual artist and their work and their imprint, and yet there's also a synergy into a larger whole. And so this exhibit, which was September through December of last year, was at the Center for Center for Contemporary Art in Bedminster, New Jersey. And so we each drew birds and had those made up into vinyl so that we could put them up on the wall. So this is the entryway, and I'll just kind of walk you through the gallery. So what we did is we paired up. There's 8 members. We formed 4 pairs, and so each pair made a collaborative work and also showed individual work. So here we have Wes Sherman's painting, and then this is our collaborative work, and this is my work to the right. So here's the collaborative work. We essentially did a mail art project. I would start a piece, mail it to Wes, he would start a piece, mail it to me, and then we'd finish those. And we accrued this kind of constellation of work. And this is Nova Darkstar and their invisible band. You might have heard of them. These are portraits of the actual band members. Moving on, we have Frank and Joe's work, forming these kind of 2 wings. Joe's work, which is these kind of intensely involved collages, and Frank's work, this kind of plasticine, and then their combined work sort of basically combine those 2 elements. This is photography by Berendina Twist, who was not at this morning's meeting, a kind of murmuration of airplanes. And this is work by Kim Bello. It's a very large drawing of a very micro, up-close view of bark. And this is Dina and Kim's combined work. This is a video. And this is Ellie's work, letters from an old journal from the 30s, and her ceramic sculptures. And this is Katie's work. These are pantyhose sculptures that she specializes in. And then their combined work. And that is collective. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Nova. And next we're going to hear from Karen.
All right. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation, Nova. It's really great to hear about and see your project. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about a group, a collective, a group or collective. I use those 2 words interchangeably, called Splice Connector Collective. And we started during the pandemic. We began as a group affiliated with Long Island University, where I was doing a master's seminar. The the kids were coming out of the program during COVID, so there was no graduation, there was no networking, no graduate shows, no, nothing that would sort of, top off the work of a master's program, an MFA program. So I asked them during one of our Zoom meetings, what would you like? How would you like your work to be celebrated? And they all looked at me on the Zoom screen like I was Medusa with lots of snakes coming out of my head. And they said, well, we want to network. And so in the professional community, of course. And so I thought I might be able to make that happen departmental wide, but I was not able. So I thought, not going to throw the idea out. We will simply do it person to person, which is what happened to so many things during COVID. It just became person to person. And so I reached out to professionals in my network and I matched them to students in the program. And then at the end of the semester, I did exit interviews and introduced them to their connector. And that's where our group name came from. Part of the project was to give them someone to connect with beyond their MFA program. And then also, as I was putting this project together, a friend of mine told me about Shim Art Network and said, you should propose this as a group. And so this is a very long-winded way of saying that the group, the collective really was born and came into being as a very grassroots kind of development. And so Shim Art Network is a project that is interested and concerned with having artists be present on the artsy platform. That's a global platform for visibility in the art realm. And you really can't be on that platform unless you're with a gallery. And so a lot of people want to be on the platform, but they can't. So Shim has created a way for people to be on the platform through groups. So those kids were represented on Artsy before they even had their MFA diplomas. And we decided to create the project as an intergenerational project. And so there were young people and old people, older people, and a whole mix, a wide range of aesthetics. This screen is just to show you our current exhibition up at artsy.net. It's not only a site for artists, but as you can see up here in the toolbar, it has all kinds of things going on. It is a sales site, and we have had modest success in selling our artists' work on Artsy. We also developed a project. I have a colleague in Boston, and we developed this project just maybe a year or two into Splice Connector's existence called Fair Share Art. My friend, we kind of went on this journey together. She began a group at the same time that I began Splice Connector, and we're both under the umbrella of Shim Art Network. So Fair Share Art is a pretty open thing on Instagram. As you can see, you can read all art is $4.50 or less. We change the work every month. Deborah and I do this pro bono for the art community. It's not just for our Splice Connector and Pell Lucy collectives. It is for the whole art community. So we did an accounting, I guess, a year and a half ago, and at that point we had sold north of $70,000 of work on Fair Share Art. And so that's a project that we've done. I'm just going to go through these screens quickly. These are the artists that are in Splice Connector Group, and you will be able to see that it's not about consistency of aesthetics. It is about consistency of quality of work. And so that is a standard issue. A person has to be a professional. You have to know how to do things as a professional. And so those are some of the very laissez-faire guidelines that are part of how we add people to the group. I also want to share. this is the right one. I have a hard time. Whoops, wrong one. I have a hard time talking and doing tech stuff simultaneously. Let's see if I can bring that back. Okay. All right, so we're going to move over here. So this is just a screen that shows you exhibitions that we've had. So to date, we've curated 15 exhibitions on artsy.net. And this is a collection. You can see the exhibitions if you go to the Splice Connector website, and just see what they are. So since 2020, this is our record of exhibitions. So these are all online exhibitions. We've had a couple of in-person exhibitions. We've done an Art Fair 14C several times. We have a lot of Zoom gatherings. For a period of time. We brought together some of the expertise from the group and worked with members on artists archiving their work and creating a kind of system of legacy for their work. There are one or two artists in the group who, especially one person whose husband died unexpectedly and left an oeuvre of 3,000 artworks, which she has shepherded beautifully into the public realm. So there's a lot of expertise in the group, and we share that out a lot with members and the community at large. So that's it, and I don't want to go over time, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, and really appreciate you sharing. And next, we'll hear from Rachel.
Hey everyone. So I have had a lot of collaborations, not all of which I'll share. I'm just going to share a few. I'm going to start with my time at Zurich University of the Art because I was in a few different, I would say, medium term collectives that were probably between a year and a half. So the first one was, and as you saw, I am an artist and a writer, and sometimes the art is totally separate from the writing, and sometimes they combine and I make artist books. So this first one that I'll show you is an artist book I made with three other people, one of whom dropped out. I know there were some questions about people getting along. Um, Sometimes it doesn't work out, right? So we started with four, we ended with three. And we were really interested in this topic of water. I should also note that Zurich University of Art, where I did my Master of Fine Art, they have different programs that they require you to do. So one of them is like to form a collective. You have to do two of them per in your whole master's program. So we came together. We had a small budget. I think you get about 500 per semester. This is Switzerland. They have money for art. And we use that to make this book. Another student study group that I did, like class collective, is we were really interested in the idea of how can text-based artwork be curated in a way that gives attention for the work. And so we were together for 3 semesters, so about a year and a half. And our work together culminated in this exhibition. As an installation artist, I designed the layout to house other works. But we spent a lot of time, it was very like theoretical as well as being practical. I also want to mention that on the side, I started the Master of Fine Arts art space in basically what is a nice closet, a large, nice closet, with three other people in the program. I think we had about 9 or 10 months, and we decided to do an interlinking program of 6 exhibitions that all related, and it was to kind of show emerging youngs. We were all in our master's program, so we wanted to have other people from master's programs around our age all over Switzerland. So we had like the first show was two people, and then one of them would stay and one of them would go and switch out. So it was like you had the same artist twice every time. Very screen-based. When I look at it, I'm like, okay, 5 out of 6 of these exhibitions have screens. But hey. So to get into some more long term, oh,
Can everyone please mute themselves?
so just to talk about a few more long term projects, we're going towards the longest. So Die Alpensieg is a book that I was working on with my friend Toby, who was in this group where we were talking a lot about text. He's from a region in Switzerland, which is kind of on the border with Liechtenstein. And because of like the mountains in this area, it's very remote and it's known to have like the most interesting folklore because it's kind of like again isolated in the mountains and they're not getting a ton of crossover from other stories. So his idea was that he wanted to translate it. We came together. I'm like, how to talk about this project in a short way because it's a long book. But essentially, I designed the book. Um, we selected about 6 or 7 stories that we translated from, well, some of the stories are in Swiss German, which is totally different from High German. So he helped translate that into German. Then we translated those also into English. So this is a bilingual book. Um, I'll leave if you have more questions, I can answer those later. We also so this book launched in Switzerland last year and it will launch in the US in end of June. For the opening, we did a cultural exhibition at Schloss Sargans, which is the old medieval castle there, and created this exhibition, which also kind of like told the story, again, bilingual German and English, to anyone who wanted to know more about the project. Here's just, I do a lot of stuff with furniture, creating spaces to read. So here you are in the castle. All right, and now just getting into my longest collaboration, which is turning 12 this year. Aureatus Press, which is my project with my very close friend, Irene. And when I think we were 24, 25, we we decided that we wanted to make a book. And we had no idea that we were about to get into a 12-year collaboration. We were both interested in book arts. Irene was working at Center for Book Arts in New York, and so had some of that kind of background and also like people to advise. And so we designed this book. It came out in 2015. It's an artist book of 30 copies, handbound. We work pretty slowly. So even though we've been together for 12 years, this is our second book, which came out in 2022. This is a handbound edition of 42 copies. But we also do other things. So we ran this digital project for about 3.5 years, which was our whole project is that it's kind of hard to say because it's like 12 years, right? And you change so much in that time. So when we started, we're just making books. We were in our mid-20s. And then together, I'm not sure why, we just started to gravitate towards like working in the environment and working with environmental themes. So 6 Endings and Some Beginnings is actually about taking these old myths about the destruction of the world by fire and flood and retelling some of them. And then in these little mini booklets, which are on the side of the book, you have the original texts. So Impermanent Earth then was kind of the companion piece to this book because we also wanted to include other voices. For this project, we had kind of like a twice a year online publication where we were having submissions from all over the world talking about how like their local neighborhoods were being affected by climate change or like rapid urbanization. So these are just a map of like where we got some of our submissions. We really were like, wow, we're I don't know how people are finding our open call, but people are really responding. And it was not just writing. I mean, as you can see from this image, we had artists who were also submitting. So it was a mixture of art and writing. And here are some of our events. We try to do like 2 events a year. This is us at our one of our launch events for Six Endings, which was at Printed Matter. Here are some workshops. On the left, this is us doing a workshop in a community garden in Zurich. To the right, this was, I think, fall 24, 25, 24. And we were at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. We celebrated our, I guess, 11th birthday on the left with a reading from a few different writers, including Larissa Pham, if you know her. She just released a book this year. Fantastic. And on the right, we did our a workshop with Center for Book Arts. Um, and I think that what I would say about our project, because I think that time is a really important factor to think about if you're going to do a collective, is that our our partnership and our collaboration has grown as we have grown as people. And like now, this year we're trying to get nonprofit status. We realized maybe like 2 or 3 years ago that it was sort of like a business relationship in a way because our work is intertwined. It's being sold, it's being collected. I'm sure Nova and Karen both have a lot to say about that too. But yeah, I think that it's when I look at Oriata's Press and how it developed from just two, 20 something year olds making a book together to then it being like this social art project where we're about to release our third book, which is an anthology, which comes out actually on Saturday. Um, yeah, a lot of growth.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I think that's an interesting question to start with for all of you. Is, have you found that your collective has changed and grown over time? And perhaps as time goes on, have you had a need to make it more formal? Um, Maybe as you add members or as you launch into new endeavors, for example, getting into a like the shim network where now you're selling work and you're coming together to share resources and get representation. Do any of you want to comment just a little bit more briefly on that? Unmute, Karen.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'll comment. Our Splice Connector has changed quite a lot since we organized, and none of the original young people are with us, but other young people have joined on. So I think that our group runs around 35, 34 members. I really don't want to have a larger membership because I think it's really a lot to handle when there's more people. And I have firmly decided that I am not going to incorporate in any way, shape, or form. I think that makes it really difficult to manage, and it becomes more about management than it does about community. So that's a real clear decision that I've made.
I can speak to that too. So our approach was really just to kind of jump in And so as we say decided to have our first show, we had to also come up with systems like, okay, so how are we going to determine what the theme of the show is, and how are we going to curate the work? So problems became opportunities to articulate our values, how we wanted to operate. And also, as we've expanded in our ambition, we've also needed to become more organized. So I think it's natural as you grow to also put systems into place. And yeah, and time together and working together creates intimacy, which then allows you to expand both as a group and as individual artists with the encouragement of the group. So yeah, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. And Rachel, did you have anything more to add to that?
Sorry, I think I lost the thread of that question. What was the specific question?
Yeah, so the question is, now I've lost the thread.
Right? I was like, it was very broad. I don't want
Yeah,
to.
it's just that as you have expanded, so your activities, whether that required you to formalize your systems more, you were kind of speaking about that as you know you started to realize you were actually selling, you became more like and more like a business endeavor, business partners in some respects, as well as creative partners. So that
Right.
actually kind of spurred my question for the group.
I mean, I think, of course, like we were probably always business partners because it's like books that we sell, right? But then I think that what became more complicated for us was that, um, I mean, it's just like what we do, making books by hand is like a money pit. It's like you do not like, yeah. I mean, like so. For example, one of our books was Six Endings was recently acquired by MoMA Library, but like it's like that's nice, but like it doesn't change the fact that like we just throw thousands of dollars at something, make it, and then get back very little. And you have to travel to art book fairs and all that. And then if you add on top of that that we have basically a nonprofit initiative, which is to give free workshops to people and to like pay our writers like for our anthology, but we can't pay ourselves, then we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to make this financially sound. I mean, again, maybe this is just specific to me, but I think that if you are working with someone or with a group of people for a long time and you guys, and like, at least for me, like I am a full-time artist. I have other jobs, but like, yeah, I'm like, I don't have like a full-time job that can carry all of that financial burden. So it's something that to think about depending on where you're going, I'll
Hmm.
say.
Right, right. Thank you. So we had a few questions in the chat as well, and so if we'll go through those, and then if we have time, I think the group here is small enough that if someone prefers to ask a question verbally, we can jump in and do that. Um, so we've answered some of this. Karen in the chat asked, can the size of a collective be an issue? And it sounds like Karen, you've decided, you really don't want to go. I think you said 35. That like that's kind of the manageable number. Um, and if Nova or Rachel, you have any further, you've talked about that a little bit, but Nova, you talked about you just thought about expanding, but you decided maybe it's better to collaborate with other collectives versus making the group bigger. Is there some magic number threshold beyond which it gets a little bit more difficult to think about managing?
I mean, I think it depends on the collective and its objectives. I mean, Karen has a much larger collective than, say, ours, which is eight. Um, in terms of like small groups and cohesion and working together in the way that we do, seven or eight is really optimal, and kind of beyond that, cohesion starts to break down. Um, yeah, it just becomes harder to maintain those connections, both logistically and in terms of, intimacy. Studies say.
Well, I think it's really important to tie, the reason the collective is in existence with those kinds of very complex aspects about group dynamics. And yeah, you're going to have a much more tight, intimate group the smaller it is. And so, you have to be very clear up front when you are putting a collective together how important that is. Where does that fall on the value continuum? Um, so, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, we have another question here from Sally. So she asks, so generally would being interested in a specific subject be the way to start? Uh, and how would you find like-minded collaborators? Do you have any suggestions for that? Or do you think there are different ways to come together other than an interest in a specific subject?
I think there's a million ways to come together as a collective.
Yeah.
I think when something happens on a more kind of organic, in a more organic process, I really had no intention of founding a group called Splice Connector when I began matching people from my professional oeuvre with students who were about to become professionals in the field. What really wasn't on my radar of like, oh, well, let's grow this into a collective. It kind of just developed that way. And so I think that, you know, it's important to identify that core thing that's motivating you along those lines.
I would also just add, like, I mean, I have worked with many people, but now I pretty much only collaborate with friends. And it's because I think that if you're working on a project that's long term, like things are going to get rough at some point. At some point, there's going to be a hard discussion. And when you know someone and you trust someone, then you feel that you can express things, you can say the hard things, and you also know that they will listen to you and not just like run away. This does happen, right? When you confront, not even confront someone, but if you're like, "Hey, this is an issue." Um, I think that that's so, for example, with that first book that I showed you, at some point, feel like she just ghosted us, and we were just like, "What?" Like we were in the middle of the project. Um, and so it's for me at least because these projects that I do are usually at least a year. A lot of projects now are like 2 to 3 years long. I just have to know that if I'm going to invest the time, that I know that like it's worth it. And then also whenever you have these like hard moments with a friend, with someone you know and you care about, you're like you can look back on that later and be like, that was a bonding experience, right? Like it was all kind of fine.
Yeah. Um,
I can add something as well.
yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, I love what I've heard so far. I think there's a real power in getting clear about what it is you want. What do you envision for a collective? Would it be focused on something specific? Would it be more diverse? What does it feel like to work with these people? What kinds of things do you do? And then, maybe be willing to share that with people and be in conversation. Oftentimes, when I do that, somebody will say, "Oh, you really should meet such and such." Or somehow, through a certain kind of magic, I end up meeting people who are resonant with that vision because I'm alive in it, and I'm a kind of maybe attractor for that to happen. And just also, I think it really important to be in circulation. Attending openings, attending art events, and being willing to socialize and connect with people is like the more connected you are, the more opportunities there are for maybe connecting in deeper ways in collaborations and collectives.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Related to that in a way is we have two questions that are kind of related, which is regardless of whether you actually incorporate as a nonprofit or some other organizing principle, do your groups formally adopt like a written mission statement, rules and procedures, like in document form, or is it more informal than that? You think that it can go either way? And related to that, with new group members, do you use some sort of vetting process to admit new members if your group has had to do that? So, do you have formal rules and a formal vetting process? And do you think that in general that is useful in some cases?
So I can speak to that. We don't have formal rules. We did have a period of time, probably 2 years in, where just as a group, we decided to put some language around who we were. And, I think one of the key aspects of a vetting process for bringing people into Splice Connector for me is that they have to be a real professional person. They have to be able to function professionally. So they have to have good communication skills, not be a narcissist. They have to be interested in collaboration and cooperation and interested in being in a group and having, some volition around what that means, and what that means for them. So it's not just that the collective is going to, augment their visibility in the world. That's not what it's about at all. And so for me, part of my vetting process is I need to know some things about the person who's interested. I need to know their work. I need to see their work. And I need to know some things about who they are.
Excellent.
Well, as I mentioned, we decided not to take on additional members, and we did have a discussion about vetting, but didn't go that way. But with regard to the other piece, it's interesting. There's so many different flavors and ways to do this. We've been very much we feel the resonance of the group and we kind of jump in and do things. And it hasn't really made sense to write up a vision statement to us. And I think we're getting to that point out of our experience, the sense of like we've been working together, we've been doing these shows, now we know who we are, and it makes sense to write up a statement at that point rather than write it up early, and which would be fine too, write it up early and kind of live into it. We've done the opposite, seems to be our way.
And
Yeah, I've never written up any language. I think that it would be helpful, but I guess, I mean, this is part of a different conversation, but I think that there are moments where it's like, even if you write something that's not necessarily a guarantee that people are going to behave in this way. Um, so yeah, but I guess my philosophy is like, yes, it's good to talk about it, but then you just have to see how things shake out.
mhm. And how would you, or do you have any tips? Here's another question. Any tips for keeping collective members engaged and the momentum for new projects and events going? Or has that not really been an issue? When you launch something that you've agreed to do, does the collective as a whole kind of move, or do you have cheerleaders? Does someone have to be a leader? Like, how do people stay engaged?
I have spoken often to group members about my determination to not drive the car all the time. So I'm really very much invested in a shared leadership model. So, if people want to curate the next show on Artsy, we have a calendar, we know when it's coming up. They just step up. We've had a series of convos where people could, for a while, we had a calendar where people chose someone to be paired with, and then in an hour convo, talked about their work and questioned each other about their work. And it was really a wonderful mechanism for the group to really know its members. And so that was super, super successful. But I very much, I'm always saying to people, if you have an idea, you know, um, let's do it. Let's talk about it and let's figure out how to put it on its feet. We have a newsletter that we do every month. People send in material to members, receive the material, make sure it's ready to go, and then I put the newsletter together. So, I mean, people find their niche. They find what they want to do for the group and do it.
Excellent. So, we've gone over the questions in the chat, and so I just wanted to, we have a couple minutes left, and is there anybody who would like to, from the audience, jump in and ask a question verbally instead of in writing?
It's Nancy here. I have a question for Nova. Was the inspiration for the murmuring exhibit inspired by the book The Murmuring of the Artistic Multitude by Pascal Géline?
In fact, it was not, but that's a curious recommendation I'm curious about. Thank you.
I love that book. Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Just one more call if someone has a verbal question they want to ask. Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for the audience. We really appreciate you being here tonight. And if you want to learn more about events such as this, go to artpluseverywhere.com and sign up for our mailing list. And I hope that this gives you some ideas and some inspiration if you've ever thought about starting a collective of your own to go out there and get started. There's many different ways of doing it. And as you heard tonight, you can start very organically and then adapt as your situation and your member needs change. So thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you,